and welcome back to another video of Cobalt Core. Because the cutting out mic issue was so bad in this video, I decided to just do a voice over the current Let's Play. Yeah, we get to watch a post-commentary version of my Peri, Max, and Books run. So with Peri, Max, and Books, there isn't. You do have some shielding capabilities with Max and Books as well. But it's not that much, so you can go with a Max shield loss, and you'll be fine for the most part. You could also go with Hull, and you should also be fine. But I just recommend losing the Max shield. You're unlikely to get the 4. Removing 2 cards here, just because you have Peri, you have Max, you can go for a pretty decent Focus Infinite or a multi-shot strategy with Peri. So yeah, here just getting rid of Corrupted Core so I don't have to draw it again. Swap the cannons to preserve Evade. Get rid of Reroll because we don't need it, and then just gain the extra shield because you don't have much use anyways. See what you draw first in case that informs your decision making. Swap cannons to use the last part of your shield. And here, yes, I do get rid of Lunge. Again, just trying to get to that multi-shot. With this enemy specifically, with the Ares, you only need to have 2 evade and you're guaranteed to dodge any attack it throws at you. And yeah, we either win on this turn or on the next one pretty easily. And there go, multi-shot for the win. Okay, so mining drill, that's okay if you want to try to go for a 0 shot. I don't think it's good here. You do have 3 repair yards. So I think just trying to go for a multi-shot strategy is probably stronger. The 0 cost books card also isn't that strong. A shootable scaffold, grabbing it does widen your ship, so for some things against like Spike, for example, it can be harder to use. But I don't think having a guaranteed 1 evade to dodge a single column is that useful. I think just having the smaller ship is better here. Here I went for the upgraded multi-shot A, just because that's pretty strong. It's a 50% damage increase. Especially if I get any sort of damage boost. Swapping cannons to take no damage. Here, it looks like I did opt to take the damage. I'm almost beating the fight, and I don't lose any hull from using my shield, so mine as well. Again, none of those are too tempting. Again, I'm just trying to get something that helps with multi-shot. That, or I think I am also looking for a Mage Crystal as well. Here, you can kind of just use 2 shield and line up where your brittle point is. Okay. Moving forward, Mage Hand kind of sets you up to tank the damage. And here I am kind of looking to gain as much evade as possible. Lunge just to move over to the side, trying to get a better spot. Line up Lunge. And yeah, I want to get rid of basic block. I'm almost done. If this was earlier in the fight, I might have kept basic block there just for future cases. I'm surprised I didn't admin deploy reroll at all. I probably saved it just as like an emergency. And multi-shot does win us the fight here. Okay, multi-blast, it's a little overcosted, so I don't think it's too useful. Reroute is nice for some like evade. We kind of have Ares. There is nothing I really want to use safety lock on, so I actually opted for just in case I want to use it later. Some games like Slay the Spire makes it so if you see an artifact, you never get it again. Cobalt Core does not follow that logic. You can see safety lock again in the same run if you skip an artifact. And this applies to any artifact, just to be clear. Yes, I do reroll the I do admin deploy the reroll, not reroll the admin deploy. Let's see here. Lunge is a little dubious, but looks like Invade does help. The nice thing about Ares against this fight specifically is you can toggle cannons onto where you have shield, and you just don't take any damage. Um, you can also evade to move towards a section where you don't take any damage as well. I don't think I get to show that off in this fight, but potentially in another episode I could. Backup stick is tempting just because getting an extra multi-shot A can be nice. Spacer is essentially a free pick because if you don't want to draw it, you just use it and you get a new card. If you do want to draw it, or you don't mind drawing it, you can save it for another turn where you do have a bad hand and you just want that extra card. Shaft emitters is good if you have like a lot of evade to deal with homing missiles. We don't have that in that team comp, so I went with premeditation, just because it's an extra burst in defensive options, and we just our build right now is trying to get rid of the enemy as fast as possible. Going into this fight, I don't have a crazy amount of offense. I do prefer running into this because it has the multi-shot, and then Ares just has the defended cannon, or the one you don't use. Here we see that I kept Spacer just because it's useful. In case I have a hand that I don't like, I can just use it and potentially get something I do want. Here I did opt to lose essentially a shield. Again, just to try to get done with this fight quickly. This enemy does scale a little bit, so it's best to try and get through faster than trying to delay. Especially with a strategy that isn't built around defense, but rather just a pure offensive build, trying to get through the enemy as fast as possible. Okay, lunge does get you out of this situation. You could use Spacer here, try to see what you get. Yeah, I was guaranteed to get something almost useful. Yep, just use multi-shot, use crystal shards, see what you draw first. You almost always want to use crystal shard when you have it. Some cases where you don't want it is when you already have max shards and you want to use something that might use shards, or you potentially want to use a card and then have the potential to redraw it. Those are like the two main reasons why you don't want to use crystal shard right away. Here I'm surprised I decided to actually no. We're almost out of the fight, so I opted just to tank the shield, just to deal as much damage as I can to try to get the fight done in the next turn. Inverter is kind of tempting here. It is a overdrive card, and my two supporting members, Max and Books, both have opportunities to provide shield in some manner. This is probably going to stack more than we can haul. Transdimensional cockpit does help with some evade. Flow state, I think, is better. Being able to see more cards is pretty useful. And I don't really want to ever take high frank intercom here just because I don't want to be forced to draft cards I don't want. I want to have a small deck that's consistently just I just want a consistent deck. Um, yeah, I'm pretty sure I picked flow state here. Yeah. Okay, we're now entering zone 2. Okay, this is a single column fight. If I had taken the transcendental cockpit or the scaffolding from Act 1, this fight is a lot easier just because I only ever need one evade to dodge the single column attack. Um, Although the downside is other fights just become harder. For example, the Jumbo Elite, that fight down becomes harder because I can't really squeeze in between a lot of those attacks. So it makes positioning harder. Um, Here I think the correct play is just use inverter and do multi-shot. What I did was a mistake because at best I would have just drawn multi-shot here anyways. Never mind. I think I might have lucked out into having a slightly better turn with the way I order things. Okay. Overclock here is somewhat tempting, but I think it's kind of a little slow. Block evolution can somewhat turn into evade. Meteor is just a defensive tool that I don't think we need at all. I think we're strong enough as is. Hard choice it appears I have. The other nice thing about Overclock is it can also be used for evade for some defenses as well. And let's see here. I think, yeah, I made Inverter cheaper just because I want access to good overdrive. Peri, just to try and go for a overdrive card. Honestly, I think it might have been safer just to choose nothing. I already have an overdrive source. I have something that can thin my deck. So I just think giving it small is better in the long term. Here I opted for the evade just because having the extra movement might be important for this fight. Um, yeah, I already have the armored section, so I can gain the max amount of overdrive I want. And from here, I just go forward. I should use Crystal Shard first. I don't want to use Shard with Overclock. And then using Overdrive there essentially costs me a haul because I won't be able to leave. Or I'd have to use Glycite as well. I could have won there if I had moved to the left first, but I did get bailed out by drawing another card I could use. None of those are too appealing. Sidestep is good for some extra evade. So yeah. The other thing is it is a retain card, so I only have to draw it once and then never have to draw it again. So if I do want a thin deck, that is one benefit. Is it does thin itself after the first rotation through my deck. Okay, we use some sidestep here. Um, Here you kind of just have to balance out on what the RNG is like. Here I just want to use basic dodge right away. I use the reverse cannons just in hopes I get something like inverter. But I use basic dodge just to eat up the overclock, because I don't need extra shards. Um, Realistically, the only time I'd really want the extra shards is I have more shards than I know than I can. Backing up a step, I have more cards in my deck that eat shards than what I'm generating. But here I generate one shard per deck rotation, and then I use one shard per deck rotation. So I'm not too stressed about gaining shards. And I should have it this next turn. I swap cannons and then use the brittle to deal the extra damage. Dice roll is tempting, but we don't really have the card draw for it, so I'm not too tempted to pick it up. Extra battery might be good. Could lead to an infinite. Both Jettison Hash and Fracture Detection is pretty good here. I do think Fraction Detection is probably the thing I'd pick just because it doubles the damage output, and we already have a decently consistent deck. Heal Booster is whatever. I accept here just because. Oh. Right. Accepting here is a bit of a risk just because you have Fraction Detection. and you don't know where it is normally. However, because we don't see the weak point in the cockpit, we know that is brittle. So we know the other three areas that doesn't have armor are safe to hit. The armor area is also another safe spot to hit. It is just less effective to hit there. Okay, here we get to decide on where I want to send 14 damage. Sorry, 12 damage. I could also hit the brittle part to win this fight as well. But I decided to try and play this honorably. Extra battery in case we get something like math.max is what I was going for. So, one thing I do want to talk about while I do have an inverter build going um, through is that um, just trying to build up shields and then preserving it throughout fights is essentially the way how you build up not evade, overdrive. Um, because you're essentially saying that this one shield will act as an overdrive for later. And here I was just able to do a ton of damage, extra battery just pulling through. And then here I believe I do remove a card. There's nothing I really want to upgrade. Um, Overclock might be worth a while. Okay. Um, you're also fine with removing a card there, but um, the one for Overclock, I suppose, is fine. Cobalt Core as a game is somewhat lenient, so you can make different choices than me and still find success. You don't have to play it perfectly, even on hardest difficulty, which I think this post commentary showcases. Let's see here. I think I hesitated there because I was wondering if I could go for inverter. Here I kind of use the armor and the fist to tank the damage and then move out of the way from getting hit again. Okay, at this point, I believe I want to try and draw it into the multi-shot. And there we go. So yeah, that is one nice thing about things like overclock and inverter. Overflowing power is tempting. I don't think it's a good choice here, just because you don't have that much in terms of crystal generation. It is tempting, but I don't think it's worth it. Berserker Drive, that's pretty nice. I don't think you want to ever do Zero Doubler here, just because you don't really have a lot of Zero cards. If you had like Escalade A in your deck, I think that would be a bit more worthwhile. Warp Prep is also another artifact that's decent, just because it's an early boost and you're trying to get through fights quickly. So that early boost is a lot more helpful. Um, One way you can think about it is um, just what percentage of like evade and shield does a warp mastery get you throughout a run? If you have something where like you have like rigs and dizzy where you're just gaining a bunch of shield and gaining a bunch of evade, the boss artifact is not worth that much. However, if you have like the current team setup where you don't have a lot of sources of evade, that could be like half the sources of your evade and shield each fight. Now that artifact has a bit more value for you. There I played admin to play just to be a little silly. It doesn't do much. Let's see here. Another thing I have also been neglecting is I haven't been talking about keeping track of fracture detection. Um, so just find spots that you know normally has something. That way, if it doesn't have there and you run into the fight, you know it's you know that's where the brittle is. And then any spots you have hit and that don't reveal brittle, you know isn't a brittle, so you can limit things down. None of the cards here I think is too useful. Maybe you could get lucky with Drake and get I think it's overheat. No. Oh, I'm kind enough to actually look at the codex for once. Yes, this is a good strategy that you can do. Just look at the codex, see what possible hits you have. Um, if you want to do the probability for like getting a card that is you want, essentially you have to add the total number of cards, which should be 21 for each character as a 1.2. And then take the total number of cards you don't want to draw, divide that by 21, the total number of cards the character has, and then multiply that by one less number of cards you don't want to draw divided by 20. From there, after you have that calculation, take 1 minus the number you generated, and that will give you the decimal, which you can convert into a percent. That is the chance you'll get something you want. Um, it's a pretty neat formula, but if you don't want like mid-max the game, I wouldn't stress about it. Um, in this type of scenarios, I would say no thanks is almost always the correct choice here. Or a correct, not the correct, but a correct choice. With that said, if you have a strategy where you need to have a bunch of what was I going to say? A bunch of cards in your deck. Maybe you are running like 5 clear cache cards for max. Maybe having the extra cards is probably something you really need. Here, I'm just trying to find a way to deal 10 damage in one card. That way I don't have to deal with the extra health and the damage that the enemy provides. Power play here is pretty decent. You only have 3 fights left, or 4 total if you count the Cobalt. So that's at worst, you're losing 4 hull for a power drive. That's a pretty decent trade, and if you can avoid using it, now that's even less that you have to worry about. Let's see here. Yeah, I think I use the overclock just to get the extra evade going. And again, I used an evade to save the shield. That way I can save it for when I get overdrive later. Here I think I just use inverter and then I use dice roll. Try to deal a lot. I'm also trying to hunt for the Proto Point. There you go, I find it. I don't quite get there, but I'm now pretty close. And with how Ares works, I'm likely to be able to get it. Here I think just math.max. And there we go. And there, I was able to not play power play, so that gives me just another opportunity to save a hull to get more. Nanofiber hull is also a nice pick, so now I can use power play, spend one hull, and then heal it back right away. Here I wonder what I remove. I'm probably removing Faint if I had to take a guess. And then I'm not really admin deploying anything anymore, so I think that's another thing I want to remove. Lunge is also another one where it doesn't do too much. Lunge or Faint, I think, are also cards that you'd be fine with removing. Overclock. And because Ares is pretty good against Duncan just because it's a multi-shot fight, that is almost normally the case. Here I am trying my best to avoid using math.max right now because overclock will hit. So yeah, if I did overclock and math.max, I would draw 3 less cards, which means I'm drawing 1 card next turn. and that's a pretty steep cost, especially as I also gave Duncan overdrive, no, power drive, not overdrive. Medusa Field, I might take that card for two reasons. One, for the missiles that Cobalt provides, and two, it provides shield for Inverter. Here, because I didn't take Safety Lock during Act 1, I was able to get it during Act 2, and now I am going into the Cobalt fight with a potential infinite. Um, Unpolished Crystal basically acts as a null card. It doesn't hurt. You are able to draw it again. And then anything else that exhausts also works out. So I don't think I quite have an infinite, but I can potentially go multiple rounds. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, I had 16 cards. I removed 2. So yes, I have met the bare max of what I can have to have a true infinite. Here, just because I have an infinite going right now, I can kind of just exhaust the cards and just try to go for it. Extra battery, it's no longer exhausts. Here, just need to live long enough to get the infinite. Nothing else really matters. Um, so yeah, here I end with 3 more hulls to spare to deal with turns. Use toggle cannon first. Yeah, just try to burn through all the 0-cost cards. Don't use dice roll though. You could discard math max, and you don't want to do that. Extra battery. Get rid of the exhaustible cards, and you should have it. Yeah, I have every card in my deck, and I gain 1 energy each time I do this. So yeah, this video kind of showcases how just skipping an artifact can be strong. It also shows you how you can use things like Inverter to give your run strength. Here I am just trying to build up Inverter. I don't know where the brittle point is. If I remember correctly, I did go hunting for it at one point. But that could be a different video. I think at this point, though, I am just ending the fight. And there we go. I hope you guys enjoyed and that you might have learned something. And yeah. Oh, do let me know if you guys like the post commentary. What was I going to say? Post commentary. Post commentary mic setup. There we go. There's a train of thought. But yeah, things like Inverter A is pretty decent here. We have 2 characters that provide shield. If you have to use Inverter and you have nothing else, upgrading basic shield to basic shield A is a strategy you can do. It's not ideal. Let's go back to the end there. I'm not quite done talking about this. Let's see here. Otherwise, yeah, just being able to ramp up your damage over time is the other skill to look at. Medusa Field, if I didn't have gotten the infinite, what that would have been used for is to deal with the missiles. And now, because those are no longer missiles, instead they're asteroids, they now act as a blocker, which is more important for things like Berserker Drive that now makes the Cobalt extra strong. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you liked the video, feel free to leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe if you really, really want to. And yeah, I hope you have a nice day. Take care.